Hello and welcome back to the Stronghold. I'm the Magi and welcome to Midweek Magic, where I want you to grow your collection by winning 2 free rare or better ICRs each and every week. This week's Midweek Magic is bringing something new to the Arena client. For the first time ever, Standard Pauper. So we'll be bringing a 60 card standard deck that contains only commons and basic lands. Look for some common ground with all those cards you've drafted and build something new. That, of course, is the advice from the Arena team, and hopefully this is a complete picture, something we have not gotten the last couple weeks with the Midweek Magic events. So we'll be doing a deep dive on this potential format and look at a couple of deck possibilities, and yes, we'll have a couple of complete lists for you as well. But before we get into all of that, this whole Midweek Magic thing has become a bit of a tradition here at the Stronghold, and it all started with our crack team of researchers discovering that we were the only YouTube channel making consistent, proactive, and timely Midweek Magic coverage. And here we are years later, and it appears that we're still the only ones out there doing it for the budget community. So be sure to subscribe to the Planeswalker Stronghold so that we can be here for you every chance we get. Now, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, right. While it's true Standard Pauper does look to be entirely new for the Arena client this time around, it's not a completely new concept. In fact, we've had Historic Pauper on Arena, well, almost from the beginning of Friday Night Magic at home. It was one of the earliest formats that they introduced to what we now refer to as Midweek Magic. And in fact, we played it as recently as the end of January. And in that particular video, I suggested a deck built around Hare Apparent and kept that actually Foundations agnostic, meaning I only use cards from Foundations for it. And I believe I even tried to keep it to those cards available from the Foundation starter decks. So that deck is actually something you could pull from and play in this event really with no issues or questions asked. I also found various references to other clients and community tournament boards that had run variations on Standard Pauper previously. One such set of results as recent as last February included this Esper control number that actually won the event, coming in first with 15 points over a 5-week period. It's a spicy little number. Obviously, some of the cards have already rotated out of Standard, so it's not quite possible to put this deck list together. And ultimately, I felt like the mana base for Pauper was a little greedy, trying to run really effectively 3-color control. So I didn't end up putting this particular one together, but I do think a multicolor control deck is certainly viable in a format like this. It was, however, the second place deck from that February 2024 event that really caught my eye. This Simic ramp build makes good use of Blanchwood Prowler, Philology Archaeologist, and Rubblebelt Maverick, as well as Otherworldly Gaze, in order to put cards into your graveyard, i.e. more copies of, you guessed it, Slime Against Humanity, a card that I'm always on the lookout for to try and make that work. Obviously, the mana base is much less greedy here, running mostly basics and just one tempo land in the form of Thornwood Falls. The Escape Tunnel, frankly, kind of escapes me. I'm not entirely sure I love that card for this deck, but I haven't fully thought it through on that just yet. Ultimately, I will be putting together a version of this available through the links down in the doobly-doo. If you have taken the time to see any of my Pauper Shopper videos over about the last year or so, you will be aware of just how much thought and analysis goes into the commons of each new set and trying to figure out how well they will matriculate into various formats. From Magic Online's Pauper format at the very top, down through various 60-card constructed, our brand new standard Pauper, historic Pauper, and all the way down to various limited formats like draft and jump in as well. For instance, Ether Drift's new spin on artifact relevant set, as well as several cards with affinity for artifacts, really wants me to make an affinity deck for this first standard Pauper. But honestly, I'm not convinced that Standard has all the tools that a true artifact affinity deck for Pauper really wants. But ultimately, having weighed multiple options, some of which have been presented and or shot down here, I decided that I think it's a good idea to start this new format with an old reliable deck archetype. The sort of thing that you could invest in and keep up for a long period of time, assuming that Standard Pauper is going to have a long run here on the Arena client, and potentially something that doesn't require a lot of upfront investment, particularly for those newer players that may have very limited resources for them. So at the end of the day, I figured we really can't go any more simple, basic, and long-standing resilience than a mono red spells deck. So let's take a minute and go through the deck. Obviously, the mana base, really super simple, just 23 mountains. And in the first column here, we've got creatures with the theme of they either love spells or they help us deal damage to the opponent. Led off with a pair of Lava Runners, a 4-pack of Firebrand Archers. I believe we each got one of these, so you might need to craft a couple if you haven't opened packs yet for Foundations. We've got a 3-pack of Kindlespark Duo. This is actually from the 2024 starter decks. A 3-mana 1/3, so it blocks pretty well. When you tap it, it deals 1 damage to an opponent, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, untap that creature. Very similarly, we've got the Unruly Catapult as a 0/4. Again, blocks well, deals damage, and untaps when you cast instants and sorceries this time. Radio Pyromancer, a 4-mana 3/4, can actually be an offensive creature charging into the red zone, but they're mostly in here because we got them in the 24 starter decks, and whenever you cast your first spell each turn, add double red. So this allows you to multi-spell and go off a little bit easier. Similarly, we've got Iron Fist Pulverizer, a 5-mana 4/5 with a reach. So again, can be defensive, can go into the red zone, and whenever you cast your second spell each turn, this creature deals 2 damage to target opponent and allows you to scry 1 so that you can find your next spell. And then last and potentially least, another 5-mana 4/5 with a reach. This time, a Panicked Alphasaur. It taps to deal 2 damage to each opponent. So a nice way to maybe help you punch in that last little bit of damage when you do run out of spells. The second column here is all direct damage. Burst Lightning, 2 or 4 damage. We've got a 4-pack of Shocks dealing 2. And of course a 4-pack of Lightning Strikes dealing 3 damage. All of these, of course, can be used as creature removal or flung directly at your opponent's face, and all the while untapping things like the duos or the catapults and dealing extra damage through the archers. Now the last column is basically just additional spells. Things like Crash Through. We almost will never care about Trample unless we do actually get to a late game situation. This is just in here as a 3-copy cantrip. 1 red mana sorcery speed allows you to draw a card. A Parade, of course, 3 damage to a creature, strictly removal, or destroy target creature, or target artifact. Dragon Fodder puts 2 bodies on the field, and oh yeah, it's a spell. Thrill of Possibilities is another spell to cast and allows you to draw 2 cards. Because you have to discard a card when you do this, it's really not any sort of card draw, it's just card filtering. So if you've got ineffective spells in your hand, or maybe you don't want to overcommit to the battlefield, using that Thrill of Possibility allows you to sneak in some of that incidental spell-based damage while maybe getting rid of some non-essential cards or lands. And Flick a Coin might be the weakest spell in the deck. We're running 2 copies of the 3 mana instant. Flick a Coin, it deals 1 damage to any target. That can include your opponent, so maybe I have this in the wrong column. You create a treasure token and draw a card, so it does a lot of incidental things in addition to the damage, but mostly it's in here to enable those spell-loving creatures. I did my very best to keep this agnostic to the cards from the various starter decks available to today's players. Very few cards were used outside of that, and most of them were things like extra copies of Burst Lightning or Lightning Strike, things like additional copies of Firebrand Archer, which are either essential to this deck, or in the case of the Burst Lightning, Lightning Strike, just universally good spells that I don't think you're ever going to mind having in your collection. Lightning Strike was set to rotate in a couple of months, but of course it was just reprinted in Aetherspark, so we've got another 3+ years of it in Standard.
So there it is, guys. That's what I plan on running actually in all 3 accounts this time around. This is such a simple deck. I really think it deserves a shot and a place within the meta. But of course, this is not the only answer. In fact, we've got 2 other deck lists available to you. That being the Slime Against Humanity deck, as well as the Hare Apparent decks. That may really take off within this format. We'll have to see what they ultimately do. From there, I'd like to hear what you guys end up running. Feel free to share your thoughts, observations, deck lists, matchups, what you found within the meta, etc., etc. All of that information will help us move forward in the event that Standard Pauper becomes a recurring event here on the Arena client. And hey, just in case you didn't catch all that, Matt would like you to know that the deck list that we discussed in this video is going to have a link down in the doobly-doo to take you over to Aetherhub, along with a link to any other alternative lists that you might wish to consider. He only asks that you give it a little thumbs up when you're over there checking out the deck list. And I plan on live playing this event on Wednesday at 11 a.m. over on my Twitch channel. So definitely stop in and check it out. Because the Stronghold is so much more than just a YouTube channel, and you can find links to all of our other social media outlets in our profile. Because at the end of the day, we're all budget players. And as a community, we're stronger together. So like, comment, subscribe, follow, do all those things to show a little love. It's appreciated more than you know.